At my son's birthday party, my granddaughter said, "She's only here because she didn't die in time." I pretended not to hear, but the following week, when the truth came out, she came running to me for help. I'm Ruth, and I'm 65 years old. For 37 years, I taught 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary, watching thousands of children grow and learn. I thought I understood kids, thought I knew how their minds worked. But nothing prepared me for the moment my own granddaughter would cut me deeper than any playground bully ever could. The birthday party was supposed to be a celebration. Jake, my grandson, had just turned 6, and the backyard was decorated with superhero balloons and streamers. I'd arrived early, as I always did, carrying the hand-knitted sweater I'd spent weeks making for him. It was blue, with a small cape, design on the back.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I remembered how much he loved pretending to be Superman. Stephanie, my daughter-in-law, barely acknowledged me when I walked through the gate. She was busy arranging cupcakes on a table, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She looked up just long enough to give me that tight smile I'd grown accustomed to over the past 8 years. "Ruth," she said, not bothering with any warmth. "You can put the gift on the table over there." I nodded and made my way to the designated spot, feeling like a guest at my own grandson's party rather than his grandmother. Other parents were chatting and laughing, but I found myself standing alone by the fence, watching Jake run around with his friends. He hadn't even noticed I'd arrived yet. That's when Sophia approached me. She's 8 years old, Stephanie's daughter, from her first marriage, and I'd been trying to build a relationship with her since she was a toddler. She had her mother's blonde hair, but her father's green eyes, and usually, she was polite enough when we interacted. She walked up to me with that serious expression children get when they're about to say something important. I smiled at her, expecting maybe a request for help with something or perhaps just small talk about school. Instead, she looked directly at me and said, "Grandma Ruth, Mommy says you're only here because you didn't die in time." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I looked down at this child, this innocent little girl, who had just delivered the cruelest words I'd ever heard, and I realized she had no idea what she'd just said to me. I forced my face to remain neutral, even managed a small smile. "Is that so?" I said softly. Sophia nodded matter-of-factly. She says old people should know when to step aside, like when flowers die to make room for new ones. I glanced around the party, wondering if anyone else had heard this exchange. Michael, my son, was manning the grill with his back to us. Stephanie was inside the house, probably getting more supplies. No one had witnessed this moment except me and this child who had unknowingly shattered something inside me. "Well," I said, my voice somehow staying steady, "that's an interesting way to think about flowers." Sophia seemed satisfied with my response and skipped away to join the other children. I stood there for another hour, watching Jake blow out his candles, watching everyone sing happy birthday, watching my family celebrate while I felt like I was disappearing right in front of them. When Jake finally noticed me and ran over for a hug, his little arms wrapped around my waist, I held him a bit tighter than usual. He was so warm and solid and real, and for a moment, I felt like I mattered again. "Did you see my new bike, Grandma?" he asked excitedly. "Not yet, sweetheart. Will you show me?" As he dragged me toward the garage to see his birthday present, I caught sight of Stephanie watching us through the kitchen window. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something cold in her eyes that made me shiver despite the warm afternoon sun. The bike was red and shiny, with training wheels that Jake insisted he didn't need. "I'm gonna learn to ride without them. This week," he declared with the confidence only a 6-year-old could possess. "I'm sure you will," I said, kneeling down to examine the bike more closely. "It's beautiful. Daddy says you can't come watch me practice because you might fall and break something," Jake said casually, as if he were discussing the weather. Another small cut, delivered innocently by a child who didn't understand the weight of his words. I nodded and ruffled his hair. "Well, I'll just have to hear all about it when you're ready to show off your new skills." As the party wound down and I prepared to leave, I hugged Jake goodbye and kissed the top of his head. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Michael walked me too. My car, carrying the leftover cake Stephanie had insisted I take home. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said, loading the container into my passenger seat. "Of course," I replied. I wouldn't miss it. But as I drove home to my empty house, Sophia's words echoed in my mind. "You're only here because you didn't die in time." I wondered if that's really how they all saw me, as someone who had overstayed, her welcome in their lives, a burden they had to endure rather than a blessing they were grateful for. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, looking at the photos on my refrigerator. Pictures of Jake as a baby, his first steps, his first day of school. Pictures of Michael graduating from college, his wedding day, the day Jake was born. All these moments I'd been part of, all these memories we'd made together. But as I stared at those photos, I began to notice something I'd never seen before. In the more recent pictures, the ones from the last few years, I was either absent entirely or positioned at the edge of the frame, almost like an afterthought. When had I become so peripheral to my own family's story? I went to bed that night, feeling smaller than I had in years, wondering if maybe Stephanie was right. Maybe I was just hanging on past my expiration date, taking up space that would be better used by someone else. Maybe it was time to step aside, like those dying flowers Sophia had mentioned, but deep down, something in me rebelled against that thought. I wasn't ready to disappear, wasn't ready to accept that my value had expired just because I'd reached a certain age. I'd spent my entire career helping children find their voices, their confidence, their place in the world. Surely I could find mine again, too. The days following Jake's birthday party felt different somehow. I found myself replaying Sophia's words over and over, but more than that, I started noticing things I'd been blind to before. It's funny how one cruel moment can suddenly make everything else come into sharp focus. I'd been having lunch with my neighbor Helen when she mentioned seeing Michael and his family at the farmer's market the previous Saturday. "They looked like they were having such a lovely time," she said, buttering her toast. The children were picking out pumpkins. I smiled and nodded, but inside, something twisted. I hadn't known they were going to the farmer's market. Last year, we'd made it a tradition, the four of us, sometimes five when Sophia joined us, walking through the stalls and letting Jake pick out a pumpkin for Halloween. This year, apparently, the tradition had continued without me. When I got home, I called Michael. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your weekend?" "Oh, fine, Mom. Just the usual stuff. We took the kids to the market to get pumpkins." He said it so casually, like it was nothing, like I'd never been part of that routine. "That sounds nice," I managed. "Did Jake pick out a big one?" "Yeah, he found this huge orange one. Stephanie helped him carve it yesterday. Another tradition I'd been part of. Another moment I'd been erased from. Well, maybe next weekend I could come by and see it." There was a pause. "Actually, Mom, this weekend's pretty busy. Stephanie's got some things planned. And you know how she gets when." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. I knew exactly how Stephanie got when I was around. After I hung up, I sat in my living room looking at the Halloween decorations I'd put up for when Jake and Sophia might visit. Orange and black streamers, a friendly ghost made from white sheets, a bowl of candy waiting by the door. All of it suddenly felt pathetic, like I was pretending to be part of a life that had moved on without me. I started thinking back to when this had all begun, when I'd first started feeling like an outsider in my own son's life. It hadn't happened overnight. That's what made it so insidious. When Michael first married Stephanie 5 years ago, she'd been perfectly polite to me. She'd even asked for some of my recipes and seemed interested in family traditions. But looking back now, I could see how carefully she'd been studying everything, learning the landscape so she could gradually reshape it. It started with small things. Family dinners that got rescheduled when I was supposed to attend. Holiday plans that somehow got changed without anyone telling me. Birthday parties where I found out about the date change through a casual comment from Jake rather than a direct call. "Oh, Grandma, didn't Mommy tell you? My party's on Saturday now, not Sunday." "No, Mommy hadn't told me." Then there were the comments, always delivered with a smile, always framed as concern or helpful suggestions. "Ruth, maybe you shouldn't pick up Jake from school anymore. There's been some confusion about authorized pickup persons. Ruth, I think Jake might be getting too dependent on you for emotional support. We want him to learn independence. Ruth, maybe it's better if you call before coming over. We're trying to establish better boundaries with the children. Each comment, each change, each small exclusion had chipped away at my place in the family, and Michael, bless his heart, had gone along with it all in the name of marital harmony. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my sister Margaret, calling, from Phoenix. Ruth, you sound tired. Everything okay? I found myself telling her about the birthday party, about Sophia's comment, about the farmer's market. As I spoke, I could hear how pathetic I sounded, like a lonely old woman complaining about being forgotten. Honey, Margaret said when I finished, that's not normal. Grandparents are supposed to be included, not pushed out. Maybe I'm just being sensitive. Maybe I am overstaying my welcome. Ruth Elizabeth Miller, Margaret said, using my full name the way our mother used to when she was serious. You raised that boy by yourself after his father left. You worked 2 jobs to put him through college. You babysat Jake for free for 3 years while they got their finances together. You are not overstaying anything. After we hung up, I sat with Margaret's words. She was right about the sacrifices I'd made. When Michael's father left us when Michael was 12, I'd worked as a teacher during the day and cleaned offices at night to make ends meet. I'd helped Michael with homework, driven him to baseball practice, cheered at every game. When he married Stephanie, I'd been genuinely happy for him. When Jake was born, I'd been over the moon to finally be a grandmother. But somewhere along the way, my contributions had been forgotten. The woman who'd helped build this family had become an inconvenience to it. That evening, I decided to take a walk through my neighborhood. I needed air, needed to think. As I passed the Johnsons' house, I could see them through their living room window. 3 generations gathered around their dining table, the grandmother helping one of the children with what looked like homework while the parents cleaned up dinner dishes. I stood there for a moment, watching this picture of what family could look like. The grandmother wasn't hovering at the edges or walking on eggshells. She was right in the center of things, valued and included. When I got home, I found a text message from Stephanie. Ruth, can you watch Jake this Saturday? We have an important dinner to attend. I stared at the message for a long time. How convenient that I was suddenly needed when they required a babysitter. No mention of the farmer's market tradition I'd been excluded from. No acknowledgement that this was the first time she'd contacted me directly in weeks. I typed back, I'd be happy to spend time with Jake. What time should I come over? Actually, could you take him to your house? We'll be getting ready and the house will be chaotic. Of course. They wanted the service I provided, but they didn't want me in their space any longer than necessary. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. When had I started looking so defeated? When had my shoulders begun carrying this invisible weight? I thought about the teacher I used to be, the woman who'd commanded respect from students and parents alike, who'd never let anyone make her feel small or unwanted. That woman seemed like a stranger now. But as I brushed my teeth, Sophia's innocent repetition of her mother's words echoed again. You're only here because you didn't die in time. Maybe it was time to stop trying so hard to prove I deserved to be here. Maybe it was time to figure out who I was when I wasn't desperately seeking approval from people who seemed determined not to give it. I looked at my reflection one more time before turning off the light. Tomorrow, I would watch my grandson and love him the way grandmothers should. But I was beginning to understand that loving him didn't mean I had to keep accepting disrespect from his parents. Something was shifting inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. It felt a little like the strength I used to have before I'd learned to make myself smaller to fit into their version of our family. Saturday arrived, and with it, my babysitting duties. When I picked up Jake, Stephanie answered the door in a silk dress I'd never seen before, her makeup flawless, hair styled in loose waves. She looked beautiful, but there was something frantic in her movements. He's had lunch already, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. And please have him back by 9, not a minute later. Jake appeared behind her, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Grandma Ruth, are we going to make cookies? Before I could answer, Stephanie cut in. No sweets, Jake. You've had enough sugar today. She turned to me with that forced smile. And Ruth, maybe keep the activities quiet. He's been overstimulated lately. Overstimulated. That was a new one. As we drove to my house, Jake chattered about school, his friends, a new video game he wanted. But I noticed something that bothered me. Every few minutes he'd stop mid-sentence and ask, "Am I talking too much, Grandma? Mommy says I talk too much sometimes." "You can never talk too much with me, sweetheart," I assured him. But my heart ached. What kind of environment was this child living in where he felt he had to monitor his own enthusiasm? At my house we did. Make cookies despite Stephanie's instructions. Chocolate chip, Jake's favorite. As we measured flour and cracked eggs, I watched him carefully. There was something different about him today, a nervousness I hadn't noticed before. "Jake, honey, is everything okay at home?" He looked up from stirring the batter. "What do you mean?" "Well, you just seem a little worried about something." He was quiet for a long moment, concentrating very hard on the mixing bowl. "Mommy and Daddy argue sometimes." My hand stilled on the counter. "All married people disagree sometimes, sweetheart. That's normal. But they argue about me and Sophia, and about you." My breath caught. "About me?" Jake nodded solemnly. "Mommy says you try to tell her how to be a mommy. And Daddy gets mad and says you're just trying to help. Then Mommy gets really mad and says things." I knelt down to his level. "What kind of things does she say?" He shrugged, suddenly looking much older than his 6 years. "Just that you think you know better than her, and that she's tired of pretending to like having you around." The words hit me like ice water. I'd suspected Stephanie's politeness was fake, but hearing it confirmed through my grandson's innocent honesty was devastating. More than that, I was horrified that these children were being exposed to such adult conflicts, and when they argue, like that, how does it make you feel? "Scared," Jake whispered. "And sometimes Sophia cries." We finished making the cookies in relative silence, but my mind was racing. If a 6-year-old was picking up on this tension, how bad must it really be in that house? After Jake went home that evening, I couldn't shake the conversation. I found myself walking to my kitchen window that faced their street, even though I couldn't see their house from there. I just needed to feel somehow closer to those children who were caught in the middle of adult dysfunction. The next morning, I was gardening in my front yard when I saw Sophia walking past my house. She was alone, which was unusual. Stephanie was strict about the children not wandering the neighborhood by themselves. "Sophia," I called out. "Where are you headed, honey?" She stopped and looked at me with those serious green eyes. "To the park. Mommy's sleeping and won't wake up." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean she won't wake up?" "She was on the couch this morning with bottles around her, and I tried to wake her up for breakfast, but she just told me to go away." Bottles. My teacher instincts kicked in immediately. I'd seen this before with some of my students' families. "Where's your daddy?" "He left early for work. He didn't know Mommy was still sleeping." I made a quick decision. "Would you like to come in for some breakfast? I have pancake mix." Sophia's face lit up for the first time since I'd known her. "Really? Mommy never makes pancakes. She says they're too messy." As I made breakfast for this little girl, I studied her more carefully. Her clothes were clean, but wrinkled, like she'd slept in them. Her hair was uncombed, and there were shadows under her eyes that no 8-year-old should have. "Sophia, do you and Jake eat breakfast every morning?" She shrugged. "Sometimes, when Mommy feels good. And when she doesn't feel good, we have cereal or crackers. Sometimes nothing until lunch. I felt sick. These children were being neglected, and I'd been so focused on my own hurt feelings that I'd missed the signs. "Honey, does Mommy have those sleepy mornings often?" Sophia considered this seriously. "More now than before. Daddy says she's stressed, but I think she's just tired a lot." After Sophia left to go home, I sat in my kitchen trying to process what I'd learned. The arguing, the bottles, the inconsistent care for the children, Stephanie's increasingly erratic behavior toward me. It was all starting to make a horrible kind of sense. I thought about calling Michael, but what would I say? That his wife might have a drinking problem based on an 8-year-old's observations? That the woman he'd married was taking her issues out on me and potentially neglecting his children? But then, I remembered Jake's worried face when he talked about the arguing. I remembered Sophia's delight at something as simple as pancakes. These weren't my problems to solve, but these children were my family, and they needed someone to notice what was happening. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart started racing. "Of course." "Did Sophia come to your house this morning?" "Yes, she did. She seemed hungry, so I made her breakfast. There was a long pause. "Mom, Stephanie is really upset. She says you're undermining her parenting, encouraging the kids to come to you instead of following house rules." I felt that familiar urge to apologize, to smooth things over, to make myself smaller. But Jake's worried face flashed in my mind, and Sophia's joy over simple pancakes. "Michael, that little girl was wandering the neighborhood alone because her mother wouldn't wake up. There were bottles involved. I'm not undermining anyone's parenting. I'm concerned about those children's welfare." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, that's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation, son. It's an observation from someone who spent 37 years recognizing when children need help. Stephanie says you're trying to turn the kids against her. I'm trying to make sure they're fed and safe. If that's turning them against her, maybe the problem isn't with me." I heard him sigh heavily. "I don't know what to do here, Mom. Stephanie's been under a lot of pressure lately." "What kind of pressure requires drinking to the point where you can't wake up to care for your children?" "I didn't say she was drinking." "You didn't deny it either." Another long silence. When Michael spoke again, his voice was quieter, more uncertain. "I'll talk to her." "Michael, I love you, and I love those children, but I won't pretend not to see what I'm seeing anymore." After I hung up, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time in years, I'd chosen the children's well-being over keeping peace with their mother. I'd chosen truth over comfort. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. It was Tuesday evening when my doorbell rang. I was washing dishes, lost in thought about my conversation with Michael 3 days earlier. He hadn't called since then, and part of me wondered if I'd pushed too hard, said too much. But when I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Sophia stood on my porch, tears streaming down her face, her left cheek red and swollen. She was still in her school clothes, but they were disheveled, and her backpack was missing. "Sophia. Honey, what happened?" She threw herself into my arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I pulled her inside quickly, my mind racing. The mark on her face was fresh, and my 37 years of teaching had shown me what handprints looked like on children's faces. "Sweetheart, who hurt you?" I asked gently, leading her to my couch. "Mommy," she whispered, then immediately looked panicked. "But I'm not supposed to tell anyone. She said if I told, something bad would happen to Daddy." My blood ran cold. I knelt in front of her, keeping my voice calm despite the rage building inside me. "Sophia, nothing bad is going to happen to your daddy. But I need you to tell me what happened, okay?" She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Mommy was mad because I couldn't find my math homework. She was drinking from her special bottles again, and she was yelling at Jake for crying. I told her to stop being mean to him, and she..." Sophia touched her cheek gingerly. "She hit me really hard. I felt sick." "Where's Jake now?" "He's hiding in his closet. He does that when Mommy gets scary. I ran out when she went to get another bottle." "And where's your daddy?" "Still at work. He doesn't come home until after dark now." I sat back on my heels, processing this information. Michael was working late to avoid coming home. Jake was hiding in closets. Sophia was running away from the house. And Stephanie was drinking and hitting children. "Sophia, honey, you did the right thing coming here. You're safe now." She looked at me with those 2 old eyes. "Grandma Ruth, why did Mommy say that thing about you not dying in time? Daddy got really mad when I told him I said that to you." My heart clenched. "When did you tell Daddy about that?" "Sunday night. He asked me about the birthday party, and I told him what Mommy taught me to say to you. He yelled at Mommy for a long time. That's when the fighting got really bad." So Michael had known. He'd known since Sunday that Stephanie had coached Sophia to hurt me, and he hadn't said a word to me about it during our phone conversation. What else did Mommy teach you to say to me? Sophia looked down at her hands. She said you were trying to steal us away from her. She said you wanted to be our mommy instead of her. She said old ladies who don't have their own lives try to take other people's families. Each word was like a knife. But more than my own pain, I was horrified that this child had been carrying these poisonous ideas in her head. Sophia, look at me. I waited until she met my eyes. I would never try to take you away from your family. I love you and Jake, and I love your daddy. All I've ever wanted is to be part of your lives, not to replace anyone. But Mommy says you judge her. She says you think she's a bad mommy. I chose my words carefully. What do you think, sweetheart? Do you think she's been a good mommy lately? Sophia's face crumpled. She's so angry all the time. And she forgets to make dinner lots of times, and sometimes she can't wake up in the morning. But I'm not supposed to tell anyone because it would make Daddy sad. Oh, honey. I pulled her close. It's not your job to protect the adults. It's our job to protect you. I needed to call Michael immediately, but first I had to make sure Jake was safe. Sophia, is there a way for us to get Jake without your mommy knowing? She nodded. She probably fell asleep on the couch. She does that after she hits someone. She feels bad and drinks more. The pattern was becoming clearer and more disturbing by the minute. We drove to the house in my car, and I felt like I was going into battle. Sophia was right. We could see Stephanie through the living room window, passed out on the couch, with an empty wine bottle on the floor beside her. Sophia led me quietly through the back door. The house was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry scattered around, toys everywhere. But it wasn't just untidy. It felt neglected, unloved. We found Jake exactly where Sophia said he'd be, curled up in his closet with his stuffed dinosaur, fast asleep. When I gently woke him, he looked confused and frightened until he saw it was me. Grandma? What are you doing here? I'm taking you and Sophia to my house for a while, sweetheart. Is Mommy okay? The fact that a 6-year-old's first concern was for the adult who'd created this chaos broke my heart. Mommy's sleeping, Jake. She needs to rest. As we gathered some clothes for both children, I noticed other things that made my chest tight. Jake's bed didn't have sheets. They were in a pile on the floor, clearly not washed in days. Sophia's room had a chair pushed against the door, and when I asked her about it, she said quietly, "Sometimes Mommy tries to come in at night when she's been drinking. She cries and says scary things." By the time we got back to my house, it was almost 8 o'clock. I made the children scrambled eggs and toast, simple comfort food, while they sat at my kitchen table looking lost and exhausted. "Are we in trouble?" Jake asked as I set his plate in front of him. "No, baby, you're not in trouble. You're safe." After they ate, I called Michael. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Still voicemail. "Jake, what's Daddy's work number?" He recited it from memory, which told me these children had been calling their father at work often enough to memorize the number. When I finally reached Michael, he sounded stressed and distracted. "Mom, this isn't a good time. Michael, I have both children at my house. Sophia has a handprint on her face from where Stephanie hit her." Dead silence. "What did you just say?" "Your wife hit your daughter, hard enough to leave a mark. The children are staying with me tonight." Oh God. Oh God, I'm coming home right now. "Don't go to your house first, Michael. Come here. We need to talk, and the children need to see that you're going to protect them." When Michael arrived 20 minutes later, he looked like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him. He took one look at Sophia's face and sank into a chair, putting his head in his hands. I knew things were bad, but I didn't know they were this bad. How long has she been drinking like this? It started gradually about a year ago. Just wine. With dinner, then wine after dinner, then wine whenever she was stressed. I thought I could handle it. Thought I could keep it from affecting the kids. "Michael, look at me." I waited until he raised his head. "This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it. These children cannot go back to that house until Stephanie gets help." He nodded, tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For letting her treat you the way she has. For not seeing what was happening to my kids. For being such a coward. We'll deal with all of that later. Right now, we need to focus on getting these children the stability they need. As I tucked Jake and Sophia into the guest room that night, Jake in the double bed, Sophia on an air mattress beside him, Sophia grabbed my hand. Grandma Ruth, are you really glad we're here? Even after I said that mean thing to you, I kissed her forehead, feeling the full weight of this child's confusion and pain. Sweetheart, I am more glad than you could ever know. And that mean thing you said, that wasn't you talking. That was someone else's words coming out of your mouth. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby. Both of you. And tomorrow, we're going to start figuring out how to make everything better. But as I closed their door and went to my own room, I knew that tomorrow would bring challenges I'd never faced before. I also knew that for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose again. The next morning brought chaos I hadn't anticipated. I was making breakfast for the children when my phone started ringing at 7:30. Stephanie's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Then, again. By the fourth call, Jake looked up from his cereal with worried eyes. Is that Mommy? Yes, sweetheart, but you don't need to worry about it right now. But I was worried. The calls were coming too frequently, too desperately. When she finally left a voicemail, I stepped into the other room to listen to it. Ruth, I know you have my children. Her voice was slurred, angry. You had no right to take them. Bring them home right now, or I'm calling the police. You can't just steal someone's kids because you don't like how they parent. My hands trembled as I deleted the message. She was going to make this ugly. An hour later, Michael arrived looking like he hadn't slept. She's threatening to call the cops on you, Mom. She says you kidnapped the kids. Did you tell her that Sophia came to me with a handprint on her face? She says Sophia fell and hit her face on a table. She's sticking to that story. I felt my jaw clench. Michael, look at your daughter's cheek again. Look at the size and shape of that mark. Does that look like a table to you? He sighed heavily. No, it doesn't. Then you need to decide what you're going to do about it. I've been thinking about this all night. I want to get Stephanie into a program, some kind of treatment for the drinking. But she has to want help. And if she doesn't? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then I guess I have some hard decisions to make. The children were in my living room watching cartoons, but I could see Sophia straining to hear our conversation. This little girl had been carrying adult burdens for too long. Michael, we need to establish some ground rules. Those children are not going back to that house until Stephanie is sober and gets help. I don't care if she threatens to call the National Guard. But legally, Mom, she has rights. I can't just keep the kids from her indefinitely. She forfeited those rights when she hit an 8-year-old child. If she wants to involve the law, let's involve the law. I have 2 witnesses and photographic evidence. Michael looked shocked. You took pictures? The first thing I did after the children went to bed last night. I documented everything. Sophia's bruise, Jake's general state, their unwashed clothes. I also wrote down everything they told me about the situation at home. You think like a teacher, he said with something that might have been admiration. I think like someone who's seen what happens when adults fail to protect children. Around noon, Stephanie showed up at my front door. I saw her through the window before she knocked. She was trying to look put together, but I could see the telltale signs of someone who'd been drinking the night before and was possibly still drinking. Her makeup was too heavy, trying to cover the pallor and puffiness. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. I want my children, she said without preamble. They're safe where they are. You can't keep them from me. I'm their mother. You're also someone who hit an 8-year-old child in the face. Her facade cracked slightly. Sophia told you that? Sophia showed me that. The handprint is still visible. Stephanie's eyes darted past me, looking for the children. Kids sometimes exaggerate. They make up stories. Bruises don't lie, Stephanie. She tried a different approach, her voice becoming pleading. Ruth, I know we've had our differences, but I love those children. I would never hurt them intentionally. I've been under so much stress lately. Stress doesn't give you the right to hit children. It was one mistake. One moment when I lost control. Was it also a mistake when you taught Sophia to tell me I was only here because I hadn't died in time? Stephanie's face went white. She told you about that? She told me about that and quite a few other things, including the drinking, the passing out, the nights when you can't wake up to take care of them. I watched her deflate slightly. Then her expression hardened again. You've always hated me. You've been waiting for something like this so you could turn my family against me. Stephanie, I never hated you. I tried for years to build a relationship with you, but I won't stand by and watch you harm those children. They're not your children. No, they're not. But they're children who need someone to protect them when their parents won't. She stepped closer, and I could smell the alcohol on her breath, even though it wasn't even 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Give me my children, or I swear I'll make your life hell. My life has been hell for the past 2 years, watching you slowly destroy this family. At least now I'm doing something about it. Michael! She called out, loud enough that I was sure the neighbors could hear. Michael, get out here and tell your mother to give me my children. But Michael didn't come out. He was in my kitchen, with Jake and Sophia, probably trying to shield them from this confrontation. Stephanie, you need to leave now. When you're sober and ready to get help, we can talk about supervised visits. Supervised visits? Her voice rose to a near shriek. These are my children. Then act like their mother instead of their enemy. He stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, her face cycling through rage, desperation, and something that might have been recognition of the truth. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car, but not before yelling loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. This isn't over, Ruth. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Michael sitting at my table with both children on his lap, all 3 of them looking shaken. Is Mommy coming to get us? Jake asked in a small voice. Michael looked at me over their heads, and I saw him make a decision. No, buddy. Mommy needs to get better first. You're going to stay with Grandma Ruth for a while. Because we're safe here? Sophia asked. Because you're safe here, Michael confirmed. That evening, after the children were in bed, Michael and I had the conversation we should have had years ago. I failed them, Mom. I failed all of you. Michael, you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, but you can protect your children. I keep thinking about how I let her push you out of our lives, how I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to her. What matters now is what you do going forward. He was quiet for a long time. I called a lawyer today. I'm filing for separation and emergency custody. I can't let them go back to that house. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that he was finally acting to protect his children, and sadness that it had come to this. What about Stephanie? Will she get help? I hope so. I'll do everything I can to support her getting treatment, but I won't sacrifice my children's safety for it. And what about us? What about our relationship? Michael looked at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy he used to be. I want to earn back your trust, Mom. I want my kids to know their grandmother the way I always knew, my mother, as someone strong and loving who would fight for them. I never stopped being that person, Michael. I just got tired of having to prove it. You shouldn't have had to prove anything. And I promise you, you'll never have to again. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the soft breathing of 2 children sleeping safely in my guest room, I realized something profound had shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I wasn't just enduring. I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. 6 months later, I was in my kitchen making Sunday breakfast when I heard the familiar sound of small feet running down my hallway. Jake appeared in the doorway, his hair sticking up in every direction, clutching his dinosaur. Grandma Ruth, can we make pancakes today? Of course, sweetheart. Go wash your hands. This had become our routine. Every other weekend, the children stayed with me while Michael worked on rebuilding his life. What had started as an emergency arrangement had evolved into something precious. Real time with my grandchildren. Time where I wasn't walking on eggshells or being tolerated, but genuinely welcomed. Sophia emerged from the guest room more slowly, still in her pajamas. At 9 years old, she was becoming more thoughtful, more aware of the adult complexities that had shaped her early childhood. "Grandma, is Mommy coming to my school play next week?" I measured flour carefully before answering. Stephanie was 3 months into a residential treatment program, and these questions came up regularly. "I don't know yet, honey. She's working very hard to get better, but she might not be ready for big events like that." Sophia nodded seriously. "Daddy said she needs to learn how to be around us without feeling angry all the time." Michael had done an admirable job explaining the situation to his children in age-appropriate terms. No villains, no blame, just the truth that their mother was sick and getting help. "That's right, and until she learns that, you're safe here with me and Daddy." "I like it here," Jake announced, returning from washing his hands. "You never yell, and you always make enough food." Such a simple statement, but it broke my heart every time. These children had lived with such basic needs unmet that having enough food was noteworthy to them. As we cooked together, I reflected on how much had changed. The house was livelier now with children's voices and laughter. I'd converted my old sewing room into a proper bedroom for them, painted it yellow with clouds on the ceiling that Jake had helped me design. Sophia had asked for bookshelves, which now held everything from picture books to early chapter books. Michael arrived around noon, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. The divorce proceedings were moving forward amicably. Stephanie was focused on her recovery and hadn't contested his request for primary custody. "How's my mother holding up?" he asked as the children ran outside to play. "Your mother is doing just fine. Better than fine, actually." It was true. Having purpose again, having these children to care for and protect, had awakened something in me I thought I'd lost. I wasn't just marking time anymore. I was actively living. "The mediator called yesterday," Michael said, accepting a cup of coffee. "Stephanie wants to start supervised visits next month." I felt the familiar protective instinct rise up. "How do you feel about that?" "Nervous. But her counselor says she's making real progress. And the kids need to have a relationship with their mother if possible. But only if it's healthy for them." "Only if it's healthy for them," he agreed. That afternoon, while Michael took the children to the park, I had an unexpected visitor. Helen, from next door, knocked on my front door, carrying a covered dish. "I made too much casserole again," she said with a smile. "Thought you might like some." Helen had become a good friend over these months. She'd watched the transformation of my household with interest and approval. "Those children have brought such life to your house," she said as we sat on my front porch. "And you look 10 years younger." "I feel 10 years younger. Turns out I wasn't ready to be put out to pasture after all." "Ruth, can I ask you something? Do you ever regret standing up to that daughter-in-law of yours?" I considered the question seriously. "No. I regret that it took me so long to do it. I spent too many years making myself smaller, trying to fit into someone else's version of who I should be. And now? Now I know who I am. I'm a grandmother who will fight for her grandchildren. I'm a woman who won't be dismissed or disrespected. I'm someone who has value, regardless of what anyone else thinks." That evening, as I tucked the children into bed, Sophia looked up at me with those serious green eyes. "Grandma Ruth, remember when I said that mean thing to you at Jake's party?" "I remember. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I didn't understand what those words meant." "I know you didn't, sweetheart, and I forgive you completely. Daddy says you saved us." I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "You saved yourselves by being brave enough to tell the truth. I just listened. Will you always be here for us?" "Always, Sophia. Even when you're grown up with children of your own, I'll still be here for you." "Promise?" "Promise." After the children were asleep, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, looking at the family photos that now included recent pictures of happier times. There were photos of Jake learning to ride his bike in my driveway with me cheering him on. Pictures of Sophia's school art projects proudly displayed on my refrigerator, images of birthday parties where I wasn't hovering at the edges, but right in the center where I belonged. The house phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I almost didn't answer. It was late for phone calls, but something made me pick up. Ruth. It was a hesitant voice I barely recognized. Stephanie. Yes. I hope it's okay that I called. I got your number from Michael. I sat up straighter. How are you, Stephanie? I'm better. Getting better. I wanted to. I needed to apologize to you. I waited, giving her time to find her words. I was horrible to you. For years. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you and the children. I taught Sophia to be cruel to you, and I can never take that back. Stephanie, you were sick. Addiction makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. That's not an excuse, though. I made choices, bad choices that hurt people who didn't deserve it. What matters now is that you're getting help. Ruth, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I want you to know that I see now what kind of person you are, what kind of grandmother you are. My children are lucky to have you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you for saying that. When I'm ready, when the doctors say it's safe, I hope we can find a way to all be family together. A real family this time. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. Not the peace of giving up or giving in, but the peace of knowing exactly who I was and where I belonged. I thought about that terrible night at Jake's birthday party, when Sophia's innocent repetition of cruel words had felt like the end of everything. But it hadn't been an ending at all. It had been the beginning of my real life, the life where I stopped apologizing for existing and started insisting on my rightful place. The children were safe. My relationship with Michael was stronger than it had ever been, and I had found my voice again. Not the voice that pleaded or explained or made excuses, but the voice that spoke truth and demanded respect. Sometimes the greatest victories are the quietest ones. Sometimes winning means not the dramatic gesture, but the simple act of refusing to disappear.